on how nobody sees them. I'd be going, hey, what the hell you doing? You go up there to that bathroom or wear a diaper. Anyway, this trapper, I hear the whole time we was trapping. I've been trapping since I was 10 years old. I'll kill this, I'll kill that. Okay, okay, it sounded like he came out of the womb with a Lego trap in one hand and something else in the other. And, you know, and he knew how to kill them. Okay, but he didn't know a lot of them you could pick up. And it's that dimension too. It's that too. You know, he said that was one of the best experiences he'd ever had, is holding one. And you guys know, this was so funny. I had the beaver, these beaver from Evergreen. I had them at home, and I had this big one in the bathtub in a cage. I usually just let him run around my apartment because my landlord was a biologist, and he thought what I was doing was really cool. And I just let him run around. And we brought a yearling home. Had this big beaver in the bathtub in a cage. And the trapper was there. And the big beaver goes, and the other beaver goes, and he goes, stop! I think they're talking. I loved it. I thought it was so cool. He just like got totally into it, you know. Next slide. There he just was really excited that he was trapping them live, man. And you know what else was so cool? Because when people came down the bicycle path, people loved him for that, man. They loved him. They loved him. Because he was doing something good. Yeah. That's a good look on his face, you know. Next slide. Anytime, you know, when I first got started, if I would see a beaver, you know, because sometimes they ram the trap, it doesn't mean anything. They just do that. They ram the trap, and they'd like cut their lips or something, and I'd get like, oh my God, he's injured. Honey, I've seen beaver with cuts and all kinds of things now, it's okay. But I used to get very upset. And anytime we'd see anything like that, I would take the beaver to the veterinarian. Check my beaver out, you know. And I always tell the children that beaver are like we are, like some of them are afraid of the doctor, right? But our vet talks very soft, moves slowly, like you should always do with wildlife. Treat them with respect and you will get respect back. Next slide. And that's what my vet did. Little love and kindness. Next slide. And the beaver warmed right up to him. Now that's a brave man, don't you think? Next slide. And he's okay. The beaver was okay. But sometimes the beaver in the traps, they will charge. And you can calm them right down. In the 350 beaver that I've live trapped, I've been bit one time on my hand. When I first started live trapping, all I had was the hand-cocked traps. I had no cages to transport them in. I'd put them in the back of my Mazda, right? The beaver would be walking all over. They'd get up in your lap, and people would be driving down the street and go, what kind of dog is that, you know? And we relocated beaver down to Canyon City for the Bureau of Land Management. They wanted the beaver to create some habitat for Colorado cutthroat trout, I think. And I was carrying this beaver, and he'd been in the car, and he was really, really hot. And carrying him, the beaver heard the water, wanted down, and started like arching his back and buckling over, and arching his back, and the second time he bit my hand. But that's the only time that I've really ever been bit by a beaver. I've learned to distinguish how far I can go with the beaver, and I say kiss a beaver. You know, I mean, I admit it, on the head. They're wonderful, they smell good. And you just learn to tell who you can become friendly with. And this is a wild beaver caught that morning. Next slide. One of the things that's really fun is I do believe that we all have a responsibility to become involved with our wildlife. It's just if you live someplace, you need to learn about the creatures that you share the state with. And we used to go into, so I love to take people with me. Anybody that wants to go, I'll take them with me. We'd go into King's Supers, and we used to buy apples when I used a lot of apples. And this guy says, what are you guys, health freaks, buying all them apples? I said, no, man, we live trap beaver. He said, you're kidding. I said, no, you want to come with us? Next slide. And here he is, caught his beaver. Yeah, next slide. Getting kids involved is really a special thing because it's so important to give kids a feeling of responsibility for another living creature. It really makes them better people, more responsible citizens. So often people just go about life just taking over, destroy. They think they can live where they want to live without realizing the needs of those areas that they're moving into, like floodplains or wildlife habitat or whatever. And getting kids involved in something like this is just really, it just turns them on. Next slide. This is again in Bear Creek. And a few times that I've been trapping in the 13 years, I've caught beaver with 5 kits. Twice I've caught beaver with 6 kits. But, you know, people say animals have no feelings. These beaver had 5 kits, and I had caught 3 of the kits the week before and gone back and was able to get the rest of them. So, next slide. So I took them home, and the beaver at home were so happy to see their parents. They went all over the trap. They were so happy, making that little whining noise that they make. Next slide. They went all over the backyard in a line. Next slide. You can't see this very well, but we're looking in the sliding glass doors like they wanted to come in the house, I know. Seeing how you decorated, what they were going to do to their lodge when they were turned loose, you know. Okay, there's the beaver in the bathtub. Next slide. This man is almost 70 years old, and he called me and he said his whole life he loved beaver and never had been able to see one in the wild. And here he is live trapping and pulling a big Hancock trap out of Bear Creek. Next slide. Sometimes we catch 2 beaver in a trap. That's a trip. One time I caught 4 kits. A lot of times the babies, the kits, will be with the male, because the male takes an equal responsibility in raising their kids. Isn't that something that we humans could learn? I mean, when George Bush was talking about family values, the beaver were practicing them. It's believed they mate for life. It's believed they're monogamous. Next slide. Sometimes we catch coons. You got to be real fast when you pet them. You really do. One time, I was telling somebody earlier, I caught 3 geese in one of my traps. They'd been in there, they came out like this, right? From the muscle, they were all stiff and sore. Didn't kill them. These traps are incredible. Next slide. Anytime we relocate beaver, we always keep them well ventilated and cool. I heard about a wildlife agency, I think it was in Idaho, that relocated 6 beaver and killed 4 because they let them get overheated. Sometimes it takes a hairdresser to figure these things out. We get ice and we poke holes in it and let the cold water drip on the animals. And they're very well ventilated. We've never, in all of the beaver we've relocated, we've never lost one. The only time we killed an adult beaver was when we were trapping in an area and we had a flash flood. Because of what humans want to, we got to manage this creek. So right now it's meandering. Well, let's straighten it out. Right. So they channelized this creek, and by the time it hit the part that they hadn't straightened out yet, it was a flood and the beaver drowned. But I'm very, very proud of our record in managing our live trapping beaver. Next slide. Our Division of Wildlife said back in 1985 that there was absolutely no places to relocate beaver in Colorado, that we had beaver all over the state. And I was lucky enough to find a place, and when more people found out that I was relocating beaver, I would get calls. And the beaver that I relocate, I've already received 5 calls this year from people that want beaver. I know that someday that's got to run out, but so far it's still working. But these people wanted beaver. They have a fishing club called 12 Mile Fishing Club up near Fairplay, Colorado, and they, you know, beaver, nature's engineers, well, they contacted a human engineer. They wanted 3 ponds built, but the human engineer wanted $20,000 to do it. So they thought they'd try, you know, see if beaver would work. So here we are just looking at the situation where they might want to put them. Not that the beaver stay where we put them, but we have a very good record. I always keep in contact with the landowners, and it's fairly good of beaver staying in the proximate vicinity. Go ahead, turn it, of where they're put. Here the beaver go. It's a face only a mother could love. It's like, you want me to do what? We're taking them out of places that are, the water's not great, and all the places that we've been putting them in are just truly wonderful. And when we relocate them, I work very close with the Division of Wildlife. The district wildlife managers have to approve the area, and we make sure that all the surrounding landowners are accommodating to the beaver also, that they want beaver too. Anyway, next slide. I went back about 9 months later, so 6 months later. Couldn't have been that, it was 2 months later. Look what the beaver had done. Now there's a lot of stuff happening here. If you take a vial of water from here and a vial of water down here and you set it on a table, the water down here is cleaner. Beaver improve water quality. The water table here is higher. In Colorado, water is our most precious natural resource. I don't know why people continue to throw garbage in it. That just blows me away. It's another thing. I think we're the only species that really shit in our nest. Excuse me, but that's what we do. Next slide. My friend Lou Pins from the Soil Conservation Service calls this beavergation, because beaver promote biodiversity by the water getting to more diverse plant life. Next slide. I went back a year ago. Now they got a sign up. This is such a turn on. Do it. Do it. Next slide. Woo! Yeah, they're happy. That's what beaver do. And I think they gave me a $150 donation. No. Next slide. This is what many of our creeks and rivers look like in the West, because beaver have been taken out of them. I got an outfitter. He goes on elk hunts. This guy's, I love this guy, because he educates people while he's taking them out hunting. Teaches them about the environment and about the role of the different wildlife species in the environment. This guy is ethical. He wanted beaver. Now, it's not this guy, but he is the same situation, looked like the same situation he had down in Mancos. Dry down there, I can't tell you. It's brutal. I took him 8 beaver, 880 miles round trip. He called me last year. He says, man, you got to bring me more beaver. He said, they've raised the water table. Sagebrush is drowning out. The elk are coming back. He said, it's beautiful. Bring me more beaver. So we're taking in more beaver this year. But you take beaver out of a creek or river, a lot of, in the West, this is what you're going to get. Instead of, hit it, this. See, the thing is sometimes people, and they're supposed to know. Biologists, it's a drainage. No, it's not. It's a creek, it's a river, it's a living body that supports wildlife, and the water is like being improved. There's the beaver dams, look at that. The water quality is being improved, and 85% of Colorado's wildlife are dependent upon healthy riparian areas, and when beaver create their home, they create a home for all kinds of other wildlife. It's like they're hippies or something, you know? I love them. And they do all of these incredible things. And they make a creek and river what it is supposed to be. Slow-moving, meandering, reaching and nourishing all kinds of plants and providing a home for wildlife. That's what it's supposed to be. It's alive. It's not a drainage. A drainage is in your bathtub or something. Next slide. And the Division of Wildlife, oh man, this is Jim Young. You know, beaver are hard to sex. I talked to a friend of mine that's with animal damage control in South Dakota. He says, Tippie, can you sex beaver? I said, well, I can kind of feel around. I think, he says, I can't really sex them very well. And I thought, well, maybe it's just me. And so I asked this biologist, and he was like, well, I think it's yeah. The only time I can really sex them well is if they're knocked out, and I use ketamine and Valium, or if they're lactating females. See, I didn't say boobs. I don't have boobs. Okay. And now I work very close with the Division of Wildlife. This is a guy by the name of Mike Babler. Love him. Just a great guy. Putting beaver around, planting beaver. Yes. Next slide. This, we put beaver in the headwaters of Cottonwood Creek to establish habitat for the green, I forgot what it is, Cutthroat trout. Yeah. Yeah. I'm getting old. And I'm sleepy. This is much earlier. I got up 4 o'clock this morning, Denver time. Anyway, they wanted us to establish, the beaver, to establish habitat for the greenback cutthroat trout. That's what it is. Now, I just wanted to point this out. At home, I have nothing elaborate. I live in a neighborhood, you know, and I keep beaver in these cages, and I connect them. I can connect them together, and I put a big pan of water in there, and I feed them. I say I trim the city's trees for food, and I don't charge them anything, no. And, and I just keep them. They do very, very well. Next slide. We put them in burlap bags. This is Dave Hort, one of my favorite people to work at the division. I love him. And the Forest Service, and that's another, here, beaver bringing the Forest Service and our Division of Wildlife together, boy, that's a feat. I'm telling you, they usually don't like each other. Next slide. We put them on horses. And I'm not real comfortable. I love horses. I like to kiss horses between their nostrils, but getting up on them is another story. And I was on a horse that was terrified of beaver. He'd smell them and rear up. And came back crippled, you know. Next slide. And this is the area that we put them in, hoping that they would make ponds for one of Colorado's endangered fish. It's so strange, you know. When I first got involved with our Colorado Division of Wildlife, boy, they weren't welcoming to me. I'm not opposed to hunting, but I don't hunt myself. And I don't like commercial and recreational kill trapping. I'm opposed to trophy hunting. And I like to fish, but I like to eat what I catch. I don't like that catch and release stuff. And like I said, they weren't welcoming to me. And the more that I hung in there and jumped through all their hoops that I had to jump through, they made me do some things that I don't know any trapper in Colorado that would have done what I had to do. Because now they're dumping beaver, and I still go through the permit process. But I've come a long way, and now I think that we have a mutual respect for each other. And I really love our Colorado Division of Wildlife. I think they're the best agency in the state of the United States. Next slide. His name is Don Pritchard. The Bureau of Land Management has called us wanting beaver, also to establish habitat, this time for the Colorado cutthroat trout. So we're starting to work with different agencies. Actually, this is quite a long time ago. It's like these creatures are tools. So, and our Division of Wildlife really has this wrong too. Sometimes when I relocate beaver, they want to know, well, now, is there abundant food? Is there this? Is there that? The whole point of beaver is, and I love them. I mean, a lot of people just say, well, I like what they do. To hell with them. But you got to be concerned about them too. I mean, there's two aspects happening. But what they do is they go in and they transform something. So it doesn't have to be the best. It doesn't have to have the most food. It doesn't have to have the best water. If you put them in a marginal habitat, they will create it to be the best. They will transform it to be the best. That's the whole point of beaver. That's what they do, you know, is make it wonderful. Next slide. And cows. This is what we need to manage, is cows. Ooh, they trample down the soil. Instead of pruning the willows, they munch them and hurt them. If you're going to have cows, you need to keep them out of riparian areas. You know, we cannot reinvent wildlife. We have to change the way we behave to fit them. They can't change it really to fit us. And it's like with cows, keep them out of the riparian areas. Next slide. But we're getting some really smart cowboys now. This guy, all the beaver was moved off of the area. He manages 20,000 acres on the Colorado-Utah border. 20,000 acres. All the beaver were removed when one beaver pelt was worth more than an acre of potatoes. But look at his land. People that do this don't understand that beaver have a role to fill. There's a function that they do. And he wanted beaver back, to raise the water table back. So we're taking him beaver now. Next slide. This cow man, I don't know how many acres he had. These people, the amount of land they own is like mind-boggling. He wanted Beaver to slow down the water velocity to bring back the wildlife because he was holistically managing his property with the cattle on it. And it can be done to the benefit of everybody and everything. Next slide. And getting the public involved. What we do gets the public excited and motivated. Everybody understands, you know, we wonder, how do you get the people, the public, interested? You get them interested by letting them see things right up close. This is an area in the Telluride. We're taking Beaver up there again. Next slide. All kinds of people. Wildlife belongs to all of us, and we all have a responsibility to be involved with that wildlife. We share our states with the wildlife. Next slide. This is just a dam near where I live, and I think it's interesting because there's a fence there. It's across actually from a high school. Next slide. And the beaver backed up the water. There's a huge pond. Actually, it's not there anymore. Somebody blew it up. Boy, it really pissed the neighbors off. Woo-hoo, they were mad. But when it was there for quite a good time. There was a huge snapping turtle in there. People told me that they saw birds in the area they had never seen in the city before. And I would see people go down there, and men go down in camouflage outfits, taking their children to take pictures of the wildlife that was there. It was wonderful. It was a wonderful opportunity. We're so lucky that we don't have to drive to the mountains to see the wildlife. We have most of it in the city. Next slide. And I went down there at night. And it was such a fabulous opportunity. People forget, you know, it's like the Lion King, the movie, the song about the circle of life. We're a part of that circle, not apart from it. We cannot pick and choose which animals we deem to live and say they must die, because it's all connected like we are to that circle. And seeing something like this really gives you a sense of peace and a feeling of connection. The way the birds sounded, the smell of the earth and the plants, it was a blessing to have something like that. It truly is. All compliments of the beaver. Next slide. And you can learn, his name was Digger. You can learn about the biology of beaver, and you can learn about what they do in the environment, how wonderful they are. But I've never caught two beaver that were alike. They are all individuals. God didn't stamp them out like little knickknacks at Target. They are all different. And do not deny them that. It's a complete circle for the beaver, too. Okay? And I think that's it. Thank you.
Questions or comments?
Any questions?
We've got time.
Thank you. use your legs. Okay? And you take these rings and put them over the turnbuckles. How's it on you don't set it in the mud? I like the mud. I have had these traps slam on me. Had them hit my arms.
The ring fell off on you.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. It's best, yeah, if you have that really flat. Cool. Now I've had them hit my arms and stuff. I used to be huge. Just you pull open and you walk them back. It's okay. And you use your knees. Oh, Christ. Okay. And you take this bar. Don't like that. Yeah, just a minute. There we go. My traps I've had for 13 years, a lot of them, and the only things I've ever replaced are the pans and the springs, and now Blair Wade has fixed the pans so they screw on, so they're not supposed to come off. Okay, now,
You ever
what?
adjust the tension on there so you don't wind up with your rack
Adjust the tension so what?
on your pan?
No.
Pan tension?
I just, you know, these traps are so much different than the original ones. Warren Anderson, I think, invented them. He used to live in Buffalo Gap, South Dakota. And they didn't have the heavy back. Maybe these are better, but I think I like the old better. You know, I really do.
The one I have doesn't have a back like that.
Yeah, most of mine don't either.
A lot
Except,
lighter than that. Almost
Yeah,
like a bed spring.
yeah, exactly. And Blair Wade is coming to trap with me this year. So, see what I do with the clippers for the... And what I do is in areas where I am, I clip, and I'll just clip anything because it doesn't really matter. So I'm not really going after beaver. I'm going after bear. Okay, so I'm just going to nip some things. And then I'll show you what I do.
That'll be a down Chauncey deal, Nick. Huh? She said no beer.
Puppy dog. What a fine dog. What a good dog.
Keep away from the trap.
Now, if these were willows or cottonwood, that's what I... Yeah, he's going to have to because he'll like the beaver lure.
Dogs like beaver.
Yeah, they do. Now, this vegetation is a lot different than willows, and I would never use this. You know, I use what the beaver's eating in the area. But what I do, and everybody does it different, I just have my way that I like it, I use a fan. I put the vegetation in a fan-like.
Did you give me a temp to cut permit for that?
Yeah. One time, this guy from Parks and Rec, God, he was such a goof. I was supplementary feeding beaver, and actually the director of the Division of Wildlife said, "Why don't you supplementary feed him?" It was made the suggestion. So this guy from Denver Parks and Rec, he goes, "Well, it looks like you're dumping to me." I said, "Wait until the morning." I said, "Wait until the morning," and everything was gone, right? And I just string it along the back, and I put all the butts towards the center. Like I said, this isn't ideal, but at least you get the general drift. And the reason I do it like that is because you use less vegetation.
Sherry, some of these guys on the way down were talking about what you would actually use. What do you prefer to use for vegetation?
I like whatever the beaver's eating. Yeah, I like willow or cottonwood. I think my favorite of all is what they call snapped willow, because it tastes the best. I've tasted everything beaver eat, and I just think it tastes the better. Okay, then I take the trap, and it's real. Now, if this is a new trap, right? I'd be so for 24 hours. I just take it and throw it out in the water, let it sit for 24 hours to get all the oils and everything off of it. And I like to get in the water, and I always have someone, because like I said, we use volunteers. Where's the nut driver? Where's the rebar? So you can, and you want to try it? We take this, and we're going to take the rebar, and I'm going to put the trap in the water, and then now you take it and pull it up. I don't want to fall over the edge. I really am afraid of water. Beaver have helped me to overcome a lot of my fears. Okay, now I'm not going to touch anything. And actually, this is a good place to set a trap because you've got a substantial back. You have to have a back with these traps. For one thing, the trap flips. And then you take the rebar, give her the rebar, and loosen the cable, and then put it around the rebar and tighten it.
At this knot, this little.
Yeah, loosen it up, loosen it, and pull the cable through.
Oh. I thought I was strong.
Well, you are.
Yeah, I remember that. Okay, hold this again.
I do that well, don't I?
You want it high up? You want it low? Where would you like
Okay.
it? We don't want to trip anyone, do we?
No, where I want it is. I want it directly behind where it's attached to the trap. Directly. Perfect. Then I want it so there's no slack in the cable at all. None. So what you have to do is you have to tighten it, see?
Oh,
Just
okay.
tighten the cable.
Yeah,
Actually, I got this piece for me because sometimes I'm going down big slopes, so I have to switch the cable.
okay, hold this.
And you don't even need to put it that, but you can put it actually closer, and you always want to make sure that you can put it closer, it doesn't matter.
Somebody would find it.
Yeah, I'd put it closer.
No, excuse me, this little thing, that's the safety that.
Right.
Yeah. And you take that off.
Mhm.
Just a minute.
Yeah.
And you never get a beaver caught in the jaws of this.
No, I've had kids caught there. And then what I want you to make it flush against the ground. Right. Sometimes I'll put an eye, and I have eyes welded on the top of the rebar. But so it can't slip down in the water at all, and you never want to put it at an angle because if it gets caught, you don't want the trap going down and then... And then I have different kinds of lure. My favorite is hawbakers. If you have a rash, you can put it on you. It stops the itching. My favorite. Huh?
I always want a beaver dollar on.
And what you do is you What is that called? It's called hawbakers. Smells great. Want to smell it? I can smell it now, and it just brings back all these incredible memories and experiences I've had. And just pound it in. And when you tighten the nuts, you go back from one to the other, make sure they're tight. Yeah, it's not. Yeah.
I think I put the thing too tight.
Yeah, they should be.
Just pull it up a little bit.
Not too tight at all, because what stops it is
Yeah, what I do is I don't make it like tight around there. I just make it a loop. So this is taunt. I should have said, huh?
it can be a plenty bigger loop.
Yeah. Make it like a loop about the size of this loop. Anyway, while she's doing that, I take the beaver lure and I put a little bit on the stick. Sometimes it pours out, sometimes it doesn't. Shake it up.
So that's probably an important part of the bait. I noticed you had an apple out here.
Yeah, but I don't use apple because then I get muskrat sometimes. I don't want muskrat.
Is it a critical part of the bait?
What?
I mean, if you had no tree species that the beaver like to eat,
Oh, yeah.
you just use that for camouflage.
Yeah,
Bait
well,
be
yeah,
adequate,
well,
or
that, yeah,
would
the beaver lure will be adequate.
Yeah, you don't need any trees at all.
Conversely, would the